There we go. Is my mic okay? Yeah. Every time I stream, I have to double check to make sure that my mic is actually coming through the right source, because there have been times where it has not. Anyway, Retro Rewind got an update, so that's gonna take a few minutes at the start of stream here. Give me that. Put this here. Okay. All right. Oh boy. No iOS. iOS error, ISO error. I don't know which fucking. Apparently, some people are surprised that mediocre movies can still make lots of money. What it was it about like the Minecraft movie or something? Yeah, that was always gonna make like a lot of money because it's about getting the kiddos to go see the like matinee movie. Matinee movie doesn't need to be good. It just needs to be hit the right buttons for the kiddos, you know? And the Minecraft movie did that. Is it a good movie? I don't think so, and I don't care to watch it, so I'm gonna just keep the line of no, the Minecraft movie is not good. No, I have not watched it. No, I will not watch it. No, I will not elaborate, you know? It's an okay movie, not a bad movie to be honest. Okay. Either way, I'm not gonna watch it. But like, yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird to expect that a movie like that isn't gonna make tons of money. I mean, people who talk about movies and stuff, I've noticed that the media critic space tends to, for at least for the more slop oriented ones, it trends rightward pretty hard. Uh, and for that crowd, just use your fucking head, right? Like, think about every time you've said something correct about how greedy and soulless corporate executives are, and think about if there's any sort of factor that leads to a movie like that potentially not being all that good, but still making a load of money. Think about like I don't know, fucking them viewing the movie as an investment project, and this simply being a success of that. Uh, uh, this simply being like a success of that model of movie making, where you churn out some uh, uh, artistically pretty devoid slop or something like that. Which I don't know. Again, I haven't seen the Minecraft movie. I'm not going to see the Minecraft movie. And then it makes money because it's like, oh yeah, the kids will love it, and the kids love it. What's your opinion on Minecraft the game? Great game, love it. Very fun game. I've spent a ton of time both in creative and survival mode. Lately, I actually spend, I think, more time in creative mode than survival mode. I've been building a city, big city. Veterans of the channel will know this. That I actually resolved not to stream Minecraft because I get so involved in building in the game that I can't really talk about much else. So if anything, I feel like I should reserve showing off like my interest in Minecraft for a stream where I really don't talk about anything else other than Minecraft, you know? Um the creative world in question is something I've been working on for the better part of 11 years. And it's a big city now. A lot of houses, a lot of other kinds of buildings. It took me until like 2022 or three to realize, oh shit, if I want this place to feel really alive, I should start building stuff that isn't just houses and like apartments and stuff. I had recently started building apartments, and then so what I did was I developed this model where I'll build 10 residential buildings. Oh boy, okay, and then after that I build a fucking non-residential building, a commercial building, or a industrial building, or an agricultural sort of thing. At least you didn't build roads everywhere. True. Yeah. No, I did not do the thing that some Minecraft creative mode people do, which is really fucking cringe, which is they pretend that it's a city in the real world and they build they like and they go into America brain mode and they just start building roads everywhere, and then the Minecraft world becomes consumed with asphalt and looks ugly as sin. I didn't do that. I kind of assumed that everybody would be getting around with Minecraft means of doing so. So that means like running or minecarts. I've yet to expand the minecart system or whatever the hell. And I'm sure as shit not building like a boat superhighway or anything like that. Um, but yeah. There's a game that literally realized that roads look ugly and made them invisible. Yeah. I don't know what game, but there are a couple games that have had that sort of implicit realization. SimCity is one of them. Funnily enough, SimCity 4, fun game, but again, very America-brained in ways that actually cause it to break city building, right? The unfortunate thing about SimCity 4 is that there is no way to build a city that doesn't rely heavily on automobile traffic and roads, you know? And I mean, to a certain extent in real life, most cities have avenues of automobile traffic anyways, but I mean literally like all else is secondary in SimCity 4. And anybody who's been to a real American city knows that parking lots are a fucking nightmare. There's asphalt everywhere. Honestly, it's like half of it is streets and the other half is just parking lots. So much space is occupied just by like, where do you leave your car when you're going to go do something? So what SimCity 4 did is they realized, oh shit, if we require there to be like parking lots everywhere, then every city is going to look extremely ugly. Very telling realization because that's how all American cities look with that kind of parking. So what they did was basically anytime you build a zoning, like industrial zoning, commercial zoning, that sort of stuff, or like medium to high density residential zoning, the parking is included with the zoning. You don't have to build like an extra parking building. And sometimes what they do is they just make the parking invisible. You know? And with like and with public transit, for some fucking reason, they make it so that Sims are so like they made the Sims all car brained so that it's like almost impossible to develop a city with a good public transit network that actually gets used. Which is not how real life works. There's still cool shit that you can do in SimCity, but it's you know, it's a problem. All right, we're going thirst mode today. Literally, when people think of the future, they're like, "Oh, so cars will fly now?" Yeah, and it's fucking infuriating. It's kind of sobering to realize that like Americans haven't believed in the future for a long time. We're only just now realizing it. Because you think about like for a lot of kids, myself included, when we thought of what will the future look like, it really was just, oh wow, buildings will be a lot taller and cars will fly, and then nothing else changes. Like I don't know, maybe everything's chromed out and shit, but like the vision of the future that is like engaged with at a very pedestrian level is only aesthetically different in any meaningful sense from what we have now, and in many ways would probably be as bad or worse than the current day. You know? And I'm thinking about like it makes me think about how long people have viewed the future like that in America, where it's like, oh wow, even bigger skyscrapers and flying cars, and it's like, no, that's not the future. That's just an amplified version of the present. That's not like that's just what we have now, except now there's traffic in the air in addition to on the ground. Now you have automobile fatalities happening, you know, 3,000 feet up in addition to automobile fatalities happening on the ground. Now you have noise everywhere instead of just noise on the ground. You know? That's what I mean when I say that I kind of realize that Americans haven't believed in the future as a concept for a long time. You know, Americans, like, again, very sobering to think about that even the most imaginative view of the future that's possible to engage in at a pedestrian level is just what if things were exactly the way that they were now, except everything was chrome and like cars flew around. Like, damn, that's crazy. I cannot communicate how strongly I don't want to live in that world. Is it weird how society deletes people's creativity and literally views creativity as a child's way of thinking? Yes, in fact, it is very weird. It's the kind of cancerous attitude of hierarchy and subservience that produced things like AI, and that perpetuates, well, hierarchy. You know, if people are creative, then they might want to express themselves and live freely, and that means, you know, they're not easily controlled by hierarchical systems of power. You know. It goes back to the same reason that that like the ruling class hates education and stuff like that. That's the same attitude that they take towards creativity and the arts, because it is precisely the form of education that they hate. Education that isn't necessarily needed for you know, like service work or manufacturing work, like job training, or something like that. It's purely education for the sake of being like intellectually enlightened and critically engaging with the world in interesting ways, right? Like, it's education as a liberatory force. Creativity is like fostering that sense of creativity. That's exactly why it's squashed so hard as people grow up. There are systems built around preventing people from realizing their creative senses and that sort of thing. See why we like the Pokemon universe? We made that one time? Yeah, actually. It's also why frequently people will kind of write off fantasy as a genre, because that attitude is so ingrained that, like, oh, creativity, haha, so childish and whatever. I'm getting bumped around like hell. I need to get away from that. Some people in the world are anti-hypotheticals. Yeah, and we call those people conservatives because they are, they're really dumb. Oh, okay. Hypotheticals are one of the reasons why humanity conquered the planet. Yeah, it's one of the biggest difference makers between humans and a lot of other species on Earth, at least to our knowledge, is the degree to which we're capable of engaging in imaginative and hypothetical thinking. Dealing, like, having such a well-developed sense of object permanence and understanding of like, concepts in the world that we can literally, like, process something that isn't actually there, if that makes sense. You know, we can imagine, okay, what if something else? And that's what made it possible for humans to basically dominate the entire global ecosystem. Like, what if I made a really sharp stick? And then all of a sudden, the bears and lions were like, oh shit, I don't know what that is. Allegedly. I don't know. Look, I'm here to talk about... I know, like, it's easy for me to get in, like, bogged down in... Well, bogged down. Get sidetracked on tangents about education, creativity, and artistic thinking, sociological thinking, because I care a lot about that stuff. But I'm here to talk about constitutional crises. Alright? But that's what I wanted to talk about today. Where's the, No, not AP News. Something else, right? ABC News, okay. I'll have to stand still mini turbo because of this. There we go. Don't want to think about reality right now. It's depressing, but I'm okay with it. That's fair. Look, There's a reason they call it an economic depression, right? And look, people survived the Great Depression. My grandmother grew up during the Great Depression, you know, and she taught my mom actually a lot of stuff about how to survive in those kinds of dire material circumstances. My mom learned a lot of things about, like, if such circumstances should hit, like, what can you do, basically. People have survived instances like this in history. Every century or a couple of centuries or something like that, a bunch of, you know, the ruling class starts getting a little bit too big for their britches, right? They start, you know, really going to town with it. We're caught in the middle of it right now, but just even if it's kind of hard to see the way out right now, things will not be like this forever, because they can't be like this forever. This is, like, part of what makes this so bad is that it's unsustainable on a material level. The constant consolidation of power by an oligarchical class of, like, basically half a dozen people, you know? They can't do that forever. They can't, like, destroy the administrative functions of a country forever. They can't materially deprive tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of people forever. You know? We have overwhelming amounts of evidence, again and again, that, like, there is a breaking point. We just have to kind of help realize that breaking point. Also, I got first. Nice. I hope this at least teaches people not to forgive the end of history mindset. Yeah. Although what's funny is the book for which that mentality is named actually contained something where Francis Fukuyama was cooking. That's the guy that wrote The End of History and The Last Man, which was a essay, and then it was a book. He wrote a book after the essay. But everybody knows that it was a book. He actually wrote something in the book, even though he described this as the end of history, he wrote something that, like, he didn't realize how hard he was cooking with this, right? He said that America would undo its own economic hegemony basically because it got bored. And look what's happening right now. Like, it is apt that people are making memes about, like, me when I have to destroy the entire world economy and ruin all of our alliances because I'm bored. That's kind of what's happening. They got bored. And so they were like, I don't know, what if we just, like, destroyed America? That would be fun, I think. You know, he was not correct about the end of history being the, I don't know, the age of high liberalism or neoliberalism or whatever. He was not correct, I believe, and many others believe, about, like, liberal democracy being the ultimate form of government, right? He was right about America getting bored and then shooting itself in the foot repeatedly, which is really funny to me. The end of history so far in the future, you wouldn't be able to comprehend it. Look, the end of history occurs at the point at which there's, like, the heat death of the universe, alright? As long as there is the possibility of things happening, things will continue to happen until there's a point beyond which things literally can no longer happen. And that's the heat death of the universe. Which is in about, I don't fucking know, hundreds of trillions of years or something like that? I don't know. That's the end of history. Until then, history keeps on ticking, motherfucker, because time continues to pass and events continue to occur. That's kind of how history works. Sometimes disturbed that some people get their ethics from superhero stories because they start becoming great man theory people. Yeah, superhero stories are very great man theory pilled, precisely because it revolves around a superhero, one person who has uniquely great power and abilities, you know? And I kind of appreciate Invincible for that reason, because it's not frequently you get a superhero story or set of superhero stories where sometimes the superhero, like, can't do that much. You know? Like, Invincible just constantly gets the shit kicked out of him, and it's like, well, you know, that sucks, I guess. You know, I don't know, man. Although, of course, that doesn't mean it's not great man theory build. It still is. Like, he's a superhero, you know? Some people are saying Invincible's a bad character. He's not strong. What? I mean, he literally, you know, spoilers, he literally beats Conquest to the brink of death, right? I'd say he's pretty strong, right? And I mean, he has superhuman strength. He just gets beat up by other people who also have superhuman strength. Saying that because he doesn't look masculine enough, doesn't win flawlessly. Yeah, I assumed as much. I assume that people, when they say, like, oh, superhero has to be strong, they mean the superhero just has to win every fight. Because what they want is not actually an interesting story that challenges, like, hierarchy and ethno-supremacist narratives and, like, the manosphere and shit like that. What they want is, like, spectacular slop. That's it. Anyways, okay. Constitutional crisis time. So, when I say constitutional crisis, I mean that, like, we're reaching a flashpoint. We've been in a constitutional crisis for the past several, well, I mean, ever since Trump took office for his second term, right? Because he just started doing shit that it was Congress's job to do, and Congress was just kind of, like, demure and submissive and breedable, and, like, didn't do jack shit. And it was, like, an unprecedented consolidation of power in the executive. Now we're reaching the point where the judiciary, the judicial branch, you know, the courts are like, now hold on, that's not okay. So from ABC News, this is about, what's his name? Kilmar Garcia, who was a Maryland resident green card holder who was deported, illegally so, which should go without saying because of how quickly it happened, to El Salvador, where he currently, as far as we know, is languishing in their, like, giant super prison, and shit like that, right? The Supreme Court, if you can believe it, in a 9-0 decision, even the fucking chief Hitlerites on the Supreme Court ordered the administration to bring this guy back to the United States because he had been illegally deported. And basically how that works is what they said was effectively, this case was brought before us because you appealed it from a lower court, right? And what we're saying is you don't have the authority to defy the lower court on this. Like, basically, the lower court's ruling stands. We're not gonna, like, overrule them. You have to do what they say. The Supreme Court told the federal government this. And the response from the DOJ was basically to lie and obfuscate and act in bad faith and say, like, well, you know, what did they even mean by like a reasonable time frame or produce him or forthwith or what, like any one of those words, right? And also, like, we don't actually have to do that or something like that. It's a very, very bizarre case, and it has produced a unexpected standoff, like, between the Trump administration and the Supreme Court and well, this federal court as well. Yeah, you could almost say it was a bizarre adventure, although to my knowledge nobody in this situation is named JoJo, unfortunately. Could have had real life JoJo's Bizarre Adventure between fascists that want to rule by retardation, the Trump administration, and fascists that want to rule by, like, technocratic due process of law, kind of, which is the Supreme Court. Oh, shit. Here we go. Reading from ABC News here. The federal judge overseeing the case of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man who was deported to El Salvador in error, slammed the government's handling of the case on Friday and ordered the Justice Department to provide her with, quote, daily updates on its efforts to bring him back. From now until compliance, I'm going to require daily statuses, daily updates. A U.S. District Judge Paula Zinis said at a hearing in Maryland on Friday. We're going to make a record of what, if anything, the government is doing or not doing. The judge said she will require updates provided by an official with personal knowledge of Abrego Garcia's status on his location, what steps the administration has taken to facilitate his return, and what additional steps the government will take to return him. The judge says the Supreme Court, in its ruling on the matter late Thursday, was quite clear in directing the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia. The Supreme Court has spoken quite clearly, and yet I can't get an answer today on what you've done in the past, which means, again, as the record as it stands, is that nothing has been done. So the federal court and Supreme Court have said, federal government, you got to bring this fucker back to the United States because you deported him illegally to languish in a super prison. That's illegal, and now we're telling you, in order to comply with the law, you have to bring him back here. Otherwise, I actually don't know what happens now. I mean, I guess the next step would be for them to, call the fucking federal marshals on these guys. I wish the government was as honest as in Metal Gear Revengeance. They would never be that cool. They would never give us Senator Armstrong, alright? Senator Armstrong is a very different kind of beast than any given politician in the administration right now. You know, his whole shtick about war as a business, he's like, I'm using war as a business to end war as a business, right? This administration's all about war as a business. Senator Armstrong is about war just for fucking the love of the game. Like, Senator Armstrong in Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is truly in it for the love of the game, right? These motherfuckers in the Trump administration are, like, Wall Street Bets retards that are in it for profit for the military-industrial complex. You know, they're in it for war as a business. Or really anything as a business. Doesn't need to be war, but, you know, frequently they do that all the same. Yeah. Yep. Should have seen that coming. Are Republicans actually poisoned? Republicans are, like, poisoned for... well, for a lot of things, but yeah, I guess, you know, for liberalism as well, you could consider that. Holy shit, I can't believe I got away with that turn. And like I said, this is a feud between two different kinds of fascists, right? Like, the Supreme Court are also fascists, they're just procedural, like, technocrat types, you know? They take issue with the fascism not being done legalistically. But nonetheless, it isn't being done legalistically, so they are yeah, they are liberal fascists. The Supreme Court is composed of people who have arrived at fascism by way of still vesting their belief and trust in liberal institutions, you know? And in a way, the administration is also full of liberal fascists because they constantly virtue signal to, like, racism being bad and stuff like that. You know, in a different kind of way. But yeah, this is the liberal fascists versus the other faction of fascists. And really what I think is happening is that if the Supreme Court just kind of lets the government defy its order, defy, like, a decision from the Supreme Court, basically their word exists with the fortitude of the United States Constitution. As much as I fucking hate that that's the case, the Supreme Court is the ultimate authority in the United States. If they say anything, literally nobody else can say otherwise. They are the high priests of law. And if they let the government just kind of not do what they say, then their own power base is threatened. Basically, this is a constitutional crisis for the whole country, and particularly the Supreme Court's justices are worried that they are going to lose their own power and protection to, well, do what the Supreme Court does if they don't basically die on this hill, you know? It's like, heartwarming. The two worst people you know are fighting, but there's a preference that the Supreme Court come out on top here, because, it'd be pretty bad to just let the government violate whatever the fuck kind of law it pleases, and for the Supreme Court not to be able to do anything. Effectively, the unitary executive theory, which is just like, we should vest all this power in the executive, actually, and Congress and the courts only act as rubber stamps of approval, which they've openly argued in court. Unitary executive theory would be real if the Supreme Court loses this fight, where basically the only real branch of government that would exist would be the executive. That one Trump supporter farmer looking for any excuse why this isn't Trump's fault. He was said, yeah, I mean, such is the nature of a cult, right? The dear leader can do no wrong. But I genuinely don't know what's going to happen now. It is truly up in the air, and I feel like if this standoff pursues to its logical conclusion, if the Supreme Court and like the other courts don't just bend the knee, right? What's probably going to happen at some point is I feel like the federal marshals might be called. Even though the federal marshals technically exist as a component part of the executive branch of government, they answer to the courts. The courts call the marshals to do X, Y, and Z. They don't necessarily answer to any of the agency heads or anything like that, They're basically the only executive authority that can compel the executive to do anything. What if they use their own forces against the marshal? Then we would be seeing basically a civil war within the federal government. If they start stonewalling the marshals, like, I legitimately, there's a point beyond which I don't know the degree to which things escalate. I don't know what happens when the federal marshals physically show up and the government is still like, no. I get, like, they force their way in. What if the government tries to use force back? Like, I don't know what happens at that point. I don't think anybody does, because it's pretty, it's pretty unprecedented. If you can believe it, even the institutional takeover of Germany by the Nazis went a lot more smoothly than this. When, like, to my knowledge at least, people can correct me, anybody who knows German history, if I'm wrong on this, but once, at any point where the courts were, like, in a position comparable to this, where the executive was consolidating power, they more or less went along with it, right? A lot of the courts in Germany were a lot more captured than the courts in America are today. Even with the Supreme Court, as much as it's full of fascists, 6 fascists to 3, like, not fascists, there's still a belief in liberal democratic institutionalism that really didn't exist in Germany. This might be the first time in history that this kind of thing has happened within the liberal world order. So the past, like, 300 or 400 years. Further proof that bad faith actors destroy everything? Yeah. And you have to constantly, like, you have to maintain the girders of the system that are designed to smack down bad faith actors. You can't let them stagnate like America did, like the liberals did. And of course, you may notice I'm not implicating conservatives in letting the guardrails die, because they're the ones that killed the guardrails. They are the bad faith actors that the liberals were unwilling to defend against. Oh, well, okay. Literally, like, viruses, you have to remove them. Yeah. Look, I'm remembering back to in 2022, a couple of years ago, like 3 years ago at this point, when you know, Paul Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi's husband, was attacked by this guy, this neo-Nazi, like, crazy. I think he was even like a Canadian neo-Nazi brother, like he was not even American. And I remember the response at the time was, the Republicans joked about it and laughed about it. The Democrats did nothing. And the news media basically, there was a news outlet that let the guy on, the guy who did this attack, let him on air and just let him talk uninterrupted for like 2 to 3 minutes. And I remember my response to that was like, dude, if you don't want shit like this to happen, you have to ban the Republican Party from ever running or holding office again. You have to purge the government of any Republican, you know, and you have to, like, basically start systematically pursuing the, like, right-wing reactionary news outlets that are perpetuating Nazi propaganda and conspiracy theories about, like, I don't know, the fucking day of the rope or some shit, you know? And I anticipated that any of the counter arguments, should they be provided, would be like, well, wouldn't that be like yeah, that would look biased. That would create a one-party state. Well, tough shit. That's a skill issue on both of your parts, right? Like the liberals and the conservatives, maybe you shouldn't have a state. You shouldn't have a government where one party is feckless liberals and the other party is literal Nazis. If you don't want me to say, yeah, one of those major parties should be purged, maybe you should, number one, have more major parties, and number two, have one of those parties not be Nazis. You know? New second party will be the Green Party. That's funny. It would have to be a not the American Green Party. The American Green Party is, like, basically a psyop. But all the way back then, we were already encountering this issue. Or I say all the way, it's only 3 years ago, but yeah. That's why we put the emoji? Yeah. I got you. Nice meme. But yeah, in 2022, I could already, like, people like myself and others on the left were already kind of seeing the writing on the wall that something like this was eventually, like, maybe not this by name, but, like, you know, the guardrails were just decaying away. And now here we are, where the federal government is basically having kind of like an Andrew Jackson moment. Andrew Jackson, during the Indian removal of the 1800s, like early 19th century, was effectively like, the Supreme Court has made their ruling, now let them enforce it, right? The Supreme Court, believe it or not, back in the day actually ruled that no, you can't just unilaterally remove these Indians from their land, you know, these American Indians. And Andrew Jackson was like, I'm gonna do it anyway, because you can't stop me. And he did it anyway. That was the Trail of Tears. Star Wars prequel cannot happen in modern times. Incorrect, actually. We are watching it happen right now in modern times. Movies? Well, yeah, I mean, the plot, the whole thing about those movies was that it's the downfall of the Weimar Republic, which we're now watching play out in real time. Almost beat for beat, you know, courts being captured, fucking business interests dictating the flow of policy, social elements of the state fucking languishing, infrastructure decaying, and shit like that. It's all there. Captain America would say, but be better. Maybe Sam Wilson would. Steve Rogers is better than that, right? I've talked about Captain America, the Winter Soldier before. That movie's based. In response to the Supreme Court ruling, the Trump administration has emphasized its role in carrying out foreign policy, which was also cited in the High Court's order. So basically, the government said, like, hey, foreign policy is our business. You don't have the authority to tell us what to do there, except the Supreme Court actually does, because the Supreme Court's like, well, we say what is and isn't legal. So if you do something illegal, even if it's in foreign policy, yeah, we have the right to tell you that's illegal. Stop fucking doing that. Again, it's hard for me to communicate that this is genuinely like it's extremely rare for something like this to happen, right? Like the only other example being Andrew Jackson's presidency, which didn't produce a standoff like this. See how mad Republicans are that they can't control China. They told them, they called them. Oh yeah. The terrorists. That's its own thing that I can. I feel like I've gotten a good enough handle on it now to kind of explain that. Be like, all right, here's why the government is being so fucking dumb, or looks like it's being really dumb about this. Because I mean, in part, it is actually, you know, obviously being dumb, but you know. I'm gonna make it to the canon and then we'll see. If they weren't dumb, they wouldn't be Republican. That's big facts. Take it around here. All right, nice. Supreme Court said the lower court judge should clarify her earlier order with regard for the deference owed to the executive branch and the conduct of foreign affairs. For its part, the government should be prepared to share what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect of further steps. See, this is the dishonesty of the Department of Justice. Listen to this. As the Supreme Court correctly recognizes the exclusive prerogative of the president to conduct foreign affairs. By directly noting the deference owed to the executive branch, this ruling once again illustrates that activist judges do not have the jurisdiction to seize control over the president's authority to conduct foreign policy. That's not what the ruling said. The ruling said, yeah, the government has the authority to do foreign policy stuff, but we're telling you, you are going to listen to this lower court to bring this guy back because deporting him was illegal. Bring him back. That's what the court said. And they're just like acting blatantly hostile to any institution that like isn't completely on board with them. Because I mean, that's part of Project 2025. That's the unitary executive theory. That's what they wanted to do, is turn America into a one-party, completely, exclusively executive dictatorship. Imagine if he's dead already. That has crossed my mind. It has crossed my mind that part of the reason they're doing this is either because Abrego Garcia is already dead, or because they're like planning on killing him to avoid a big mess and also avoid having to do what the Supreme Court says. You know? Option number one. Here's the three ways that I see this playing out, right? Or I guess there could be four ways that this plays out. Option number one, the good ending. The courts send in the federal marshals and, like, actually physically compel the government to bring back Abrego Garcia. You know, one man out of thousands, right? Some fucking good ending that is. But at least, you know, the executive doesn't have 100% complete control of the government yet, right? Option number two, the court just fucking backs down. Maybe they send in the marshals and it doesn't go quite right, or they, like, decide not to send in marshals at all because of some weirdo, like, still, like, vestigial hanging on belief in liberal institutionalism or something like that, where, oh, they'll do the right thing, you know? Which I think is actually not super likely, but it's possible that that happens too, in which case, great, unitary executive theory is real, and no more fucking checks and balances, even harder than was already the case, you know? Option number three, Garcia is already dead, and the government is dragging its feet to avoid having to, like, explain any of that. Yeah, this judge, I think, Judge Zinnes, is too aggressive and too, like, has too genuine of a belief in, like, upholding the Constitution and checks and balances for scenario number two to be particularly likely. Scenario number three is that Garcia is already dead, and the government's just trying to, like, cover some shit up and like, not have to do what the Supreme Court says because they're like, well, you know, he's already dead, so who the fuck cares? What does it matter? Option number four is that he is still alive, and the government, like, has him killed in order to avoid doing what the court says and bringing him back to the U.S. Right? Those are the possibilities in my mind. Yeah, like, okay, here he is. It's his dead body. You know? That's the four ways that I see this going. Right? Yeah, look, the Abrego Garcia's lawyer, defending him and advocating for him in absentia, because he's in El Salvador, said the rule of law prevailed. The Supreme Court upheld the district judge's order that the government has to bring Kilmar home, which is true. Even though they were weirdly deferential to the executive, they said, you have to bring him home. Now they need to stop wasting time and get moving, which the government is not going to do. They're going to drag their feet as long as possible. What would the judge say at that point? I don't fucking know, dude. You know, like, being told, but to do it ruins their power fantasy. Yeah, that's why I think this is partly why this has become a standoff. You know, because it's like, well, part of it is because they genuinely want the consolidation of power, and the Supreme Court stands in the way of that. And part of it is also just because, like, we're in charge now. We don't want anybody telling us what to do, and currently it's the Supreme Court doing that. You know, which, in a way, I mean, it's like, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? But still. Oh, wow, they both fell off? Huh. It's a difficult time. It's hard for me to analyze this too. Again, because of, like, how unprecedented it is. I don't have much to go on, right? Oh no, I tried to jump, but it ate my jump. I had already dodged the red shells, I guess, so I just kind of bit the big one. Oh, blue shell. I wonder if I do. Oh no, I messed up the POW dodge? I haven't done that in a while. Okay, so far so good. Now if I could just not have any glaring mistakes on lap 3, I would be quite happy with that. I would be quite happy to get second here. Cool. I find it weird when I tell people I don't like something because of sexism. They're like, but culture. I've never had that experience, I don't think. Mostly with anime? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes anime is, like, really fucking off-putting. Again, just because it's super weird about women. So I just kind of don't watch it. And I realize that there's a lot of people that talk about anime that are, like, on the manosphere side of that pipeline, and that are also extremely weird about women. So, you know. Basically what I'm saying is that the online anime enjoyers are toxic as fuck and super weird about women. So I don't, like, ever engage with them. And if I watch anime, I just kind of watch it and like, wow, that was nice. Good. UJ says it doesn't know the whereabouts of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia. Yeah, lots riding on this case. We'll have to see how it plays out. There's so much going on. It's like hard for me to talk about that. Like, sometimes the procedural parts of government like fail to, well, particularly stuff involving the judiciary like this. It's not my strong suit, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe I'm thinking like, oh, there must be something more here, but there's just not. It's just like there's a standoff between the Supreme Court and the executive branch because the executive branch broke the law flagrantly and sent this green card like legal resident to a fucking concentration camp in El Salvador. And now the courts are saying, dog, bring him back, and the government is saying no because they're extremely Hitlerite, and that would be, like, really bad if the government got its way, so we don't want the government to get its way here. I guess that's, like, that's kind of it. That's kind of all that's happening here. If you made this year into a show, like, 2 years ago, people wouldn't believe you. Yeah, you're probably right. I don't think they would. You'd, like, half the shit that is happening right now would be written off as way too unrealistic. You know? And I think that's just because of, like, all the bad shit that had to happen to get to this point. And, like, it's a pretty natural tendency for people to underestimate the likelihood of bad things happening. Yeah, that's not realistic. It isn't liberal enough. Too many things happened. Yeah, when they're confronted with this fucking shit, their brain blows up. I actually saw... I didn't watch the video, but I saw that there was a video that somebody was like, we made a simulated government in Minecraft, right? Like a bunch of teenagers playing Minecraft, and we let them run the government, right? It was like basically a miniaturized society with a framework of presumably liberal democracy, right? And what was interesting is in the thumbnail, there were three things that I'm assuming are like component parts of the video. That it was like corruption rampant, court stacked, parliament dissolved. And I was like, now that's interesting, right? That's interesting to me because it almost indicates that like when people are younger and more full of like the creative juices that get squandered as the brain rot of liberalism seeps in deeper and deeper, thank you. It's like they're more willing to do both good and bad stuff, you know? Like Parliament getting dissolved is a thing that happens in democratic countries, right? It's like, okay, Parliament's dissolved, I'm calling for new elections, right? So you have to reconstitute Parliament, stuff like that. It kind of made me think how much of us getting to this point was brought on, like, purely by the inaction of well, particularly the liberals, but, like, everybody in government. How they just wanted to, like, grease the wheels to keep things exactly how they are, instead of, like, doing anything. What I'm saying is that the government has been run probably for an uncomfortably long amount of time by grifters with no real political aspirations, both in the Democratic and Republican Party, which is why nothing gets happened, because they don't believe in the concept of doing anything in government, because they don't believe that's why it's there. They believe it's there basically to advance their personal careers and, like, be a jobs program for the upper middle class. Oh no, I'm sorry. Oh man. Oh, that fucked him up good. No! I keep getting spin drifts when I'm not doing spin drifts. The consequences of playing on an analog stick, I guess. Huh. Okay. Somehow didn't get hit by anything. I'm gonna just mushroom through this part. Okay. And that's the end. Society treats power like a video game? Found something stupid. What's the political ideology of Undertale? Nobody knows. Least of all, probably the guy that made Undertale. Okay. Speaking of grift and politics, this is something that I feel like I have a rare opportunity to explain at a moment of clarity, right? Left a little bit because there's trans goes furry in the Nintendo version. Okay. So it can't be, you know, centrism or any brand of conservatism. Gotcha. Okay, well, that's nice. This is now the third time that tariffs from the United States to all of our biggest trading partners, not the least of which being China, have been implemented and then subsequently backpedaled on, even if it's not a full backpedaling, right? I mean, this time it was. The last couple times, I don't think it was, right? We had in February and March, and now it's April. So that's 3 times. And I feel like that's enough to show that there's a grift motivating this. The opponents aren't backing down. Yes, that's another thing. First, it's worth pointing out, obviously, that the administration is fucking dumb for thinking that this is how it works in the first place, right? When you put tariffs on another country and they put tariffs on you, saying just kidding, we're revoking our tariffs, doesn't revoke their tariffs. So they've already destroyed the United States economy by alienating all of our allies and trading partners. China has massive tariffs on us. The European Union and Canada and Mexico have tariffs on us. All the countries that we put tariffs on now have tariffs on us. And they are not backing down. You know? Donald Trump saying, just kidding, we're not doing the tariffs, or like we're pausing them for 90 days, only revokes our side of the tariffs. And then other countries are like, well, we still don't fucking trust you. You're like acting unstable and bipolar. So we're going to keep our tariffs on you. You know? That's part one. Part two is they may or may not care about how dumb it is, because these tariffs are motivated by pure grift. The grift is this, right? Trump and all his, like a bunch of his oligarch buddies are currently in the government. They're running the government, right? What they do is they buy, or they have their stock portfolios and they sell. They sell right before announcing the tariffs. Then they announce the tariffs, so they've sold at a high point. Then they manipulate the market to create a new low point. They say like, all right, new round of tariffs, and they let the market shit itself for a little while, long enough for them to swoop in and buy the dip. You know, you know about the meme that buy the dip or whatever. It means like basically buy the market when it is reaching a low point, so that you can then sell it when it starts getting to a peak again. Most people aren't wealthy enough to do that, but Trump and the other oligarchs, you know, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, fucking who's that fucking Shark Tank guy, Kevin O'Leary, a bunch of like Fox business people and like anybody who's in the 100 millions or billions, like they have the money to do that. So they go and they buy the dip, anybody who's basically in on the joke. Then once they've all bought the dip, they're like, all right, we've got our portfolio. Now let's call off the tariffs. And they call off the tariffs, and the stock market is like, whew, you know, we can do stock market things again. The line can go up. And once the line goes up, their new assets start to appreciate. They basically use that to manipulate the market, muscle people out of the stock market by making it shit itself with the very real threat of tariffs. Then they buy the dip and wait for the market to recover, at least somewhat. Then they do the whole thing over again. And they just keep doing that over and over and over. And the objective is that, like, over time, they're just going to, like, consolidate more and more and more of what's left of the economy. The game here is relative profit. The economic crash is going to happen whether or not the tariffs stay in place. And I have no reason to believe, now that they've done this 3 times, said, all right, we're doing the tariffs for real, then they say, just kidding. I have no reason to believe that they're going to do anything different than that same exact thing in the future, right? They might do this every month for all I know. Tariffs, nah, just kidding. Tariffs, nah, just kidding. And each time they sell high, buy the dip that they created, and then watch the stock market bounce back and forth, mostly crashing and becoming extremely volatile, but their portfolios grow. It is legitimately like in the book 1984, where O'Brien, when he's doing that big exposition dump to Winston, is saying, like, we don't care if we make life worse for literally everybody. We're making life worse for ourselves as well in an absolute sense. But compared to the proletariat, compared to the working class, we benefit more. You know, the gap widens. That's their game here. They forget about other countries' tariffs. Well, that's what I said at the beginning with this. They don't care. That, like, the tariffs affect the economy at large, the real economy, the stuff that would have the power to generate mass suffering or mass flourishing even, right? They don't care about that part. Not necessarily anyways. You know, with or without the other country's tariffs, they can still do the, like, buy the dip and then sell high, announce tariffs, buy the dip, just kidding, you know, watch the market rebound and stuff like that, right? They can still do that even with other countries having tariffs on America. What they're interested in basically is doing to America what the oligarchs did to Russia. Hollowing it out. Economically raping it to death. And, initially, myself and a lot of others thought that they were going to do the tariff. It really did seem like for a little while they were actually serious about putting tariffs in place and killing the economy that way. But now it seems like they're just going to do the whole just kidding shtick, where they pretend to do tariffs, then they, revoke them at the last minute, or even, beyond the last minute, and just use that as a sort of market manipulation. So I don't think they've forgotten about the other countries having tariffs on us. I think they just don't care, because what tariffs affect tariffs affect the economy, but not in a way that prevents them from running this scheme, right? From running this grift. Does that make sense? I would do the George Carlin, it's a big club and we're not in it, but it's not a very big club. Like I've said in other videos, it's probably like maximum of 1,000 people worldwide. Not that many people are wealthy enough to be in on the grift. They also have enough money to stay in the beginning of the Depression, so they can just wait until the opponent feels pain. Yeah, that's true. They have enough wealth that even if their portfolio depreciates or whatever, like even if they lose some money in an absolute sense, again, they can just weather the storm because they have money and like other people don't. Oh, dang it. I was going to go for the sand mob. Feels like they're undefeatable. That's what they want you to think, right? The reason they're doing this is because they have no fucking idea how to, like, do anything other than, like, rape a country to death, right? Like, I've explained how, like, billionaires get so isolated that all they have is the fact that they're a billionaire. Like, they literally don't have anything of value or connection to humanity or whatever. This is all they are. Feels like the average person would rather commit suicide than recognize that they're an evil organization. Yeah, and that is again by design. That's part of this propaganda network that exists. The Fox Newses, the Newsmaxes, the OANs, the fucking CNBCs of the world. But this is where accelerationism comes in clutch. Is because you can only run that gamut. You can only run that grift for so long. If you're destroying things so hard that people are going to feel the pain of it, whether whether they've been sold on it or not, And of course, to answer the moment, right, to meet the moment, you have to have a populist left willing to say, hey, why don't we fucking do something about all these billionaires cashing in on your misery, right? That narrative cuts through the propaganda surprisingly easily. And because it's propaganda of, by, and for the rich, whenever a line that is directly hostile to the owning class comes up, they have to defend the owning class. Oops. Democrats don't like populism. Yeah, I know they don't. Oh, well, there's my batteries. And that's why the Democrats need to die. They're part of this consent manufacturing machine. There's like a big machine that's basically acts as a set of barriers, a wall, like a set of walls, and it's like tower defense. The Democrats are one of those barriers that protects the billionaires while they fucking destroy America, right? All of those barriers need to go if if any of this is going to be fixed. Democrats need to go. The left populists is like we're playing the fucking tower defense mobile game, except we're like the zombies attacking the base or whatever. Just imagine it this way, right? And we need to eliminate all those barriers. People are like, what should I be mad at? I know Nintendo. Yeah. Yeah, it's just because, gaming is a comfort thing for a lot of people. And so when that finally gets encroached on, they react very strongly. Such as the relationship that people have with Nintendo, where it really is just grievance politics. My comfort thing, my comfortable like sweet treat, is now more expensive, even though it's not really. Or it's going to be. We don't know how much more expensive it's going to be yet, but $450 is not like unreasonable by any stretch for a home console. You know, um, but it's reserved for that and not like the rest of the shit. The only way you're getting out of this is the average person is going to go crazy. Yeah, basically. I mean, that's kind of what revolutionary conditions are, right? Life gets so fucking insane that the regular person goes insane along with it, starts tweaking out and overthrows his government. Like in Zoomer terms, that's what Lenin described, is that like you fucking everything becomes Ohio and then everybody starts like completely crashing out. There's a collective like societal crash out and you overthrow the government because of like how bad things were. But things have to be that bad for people to crash out like that. Uh-oh. Exit. I think my batteries died. My batteries might have died. Yeah. I think my batteries are dead. Well, I feel like this stream wasn't destined for greatness or anything anyway. Look, I kind of did it just for consistency's sake, and because I do think like I wanted to explain that this tariff thing is pretty transparently a grift, right? They're running this grift, and they're just going to do it ad infinitum. Let's try something like this. Let's try turning off the Wii U. So anytime that America announces tariffs, know that they're going to go through with it enough for other countries to start tariffing us, like more. And then they're going to pull back at the last second and be like, haha, just kidding. But that's not going to, like, stop anything. I think the Immortal is straight up all the average voters. True. Although, actually, no, you know what? The Immortal is not. Because in Season 1, you learned that the Immortal is actually Abraham Lincoln. He always blames someone else. Oh, you meant that. Yeah, that's true. But I do still think it's funny that the Immortal is also President Lincoln. Which means you can blame the Immortal for Jim Crow. True. Yeah. It's very easy to fall into the, like, to, if you're a superhero, like, you kind of, like, I know people could say, like, oh, it's unfair responsibility to lop on it. Like, no, fuck that. You're a public figure. You should have a well-defined stance on, like, a pertinent issue or something. Like, back in the day with Jim Crow, I don't know. Maybe that's part of like the point of the show or something. That Immortal's not really he's a very flawed person. He's just lived for hell long. Uh-oh. Mahmoud Khalil deportation? What's going on here? You gotta be shitting me. Louisiana immigration judge says Mahmoud Khalil can be deported. The man is not suspected of having committed any crime. They're just like, yeah, we can deport him just for fun. Haha. Smiley face. Presumably because he was protesting against Israel. Armenian easily defeats them without trying. True. Yeah, that is actually kind of interesting that like superhero team emblematic of the liberal world order just gets fucking rolled by one fascist in like 10 minutes. Louisiana immigration judge said on Friday that Columbia University graduate Mahmoud Khalil, legal permanent resident, can be deported after the U.S. government argued his presence posed potentially serious foreign policy consequences. Dog. The United States government argued that Mahmoud Khalil's presence posed potentially serious foreign policy consequences. Brother, America is so fucking cucked. You know what this means, right? Like, whatever. Look, I'm tired. Fucking don't have the energy for this today. Why do you even care what they say anymore? They're just deflecting at this. Well, yeah, I mean, like, but understand that what they're saying is we deported him because he doesn't like Israel. Like, it's you know, they're now saying like, okay, it's open season on pro-Palestine protesters because that poses serious foreign policy consequences or something. So, you know, be careful about there. If they had their way, they would shoot you if you don't say I love Trump. That's true. But I feel like it's important to cover this because it's like this affects how easy it is for them to get that, you know? Old fashioned melee. What's Cody doing? I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna raid anybody today. I'll be back at a later date. See ya. Unfortunate that my game crashed. I'll have to replace my batteries too.